I love you. I love your content. I love everything you do. So yeah,
Aw.
I'm very honored. I'm very honored to have you as my guest today.
Same.
Um,
Thank you for having me on your show. Likewise, content as well. And I always find your clips to be very funny. So I
Thank you.
appreciate
Insanity is a fun philosophy podcast. I kind of thought what society thinks is normal doesn't feel so normal, at least to me. And I think that if we look like at the average person who's not that happy, not that healthy, and all that stuff, then being normal isn't probably, or normal what we think it is, isn't probably so achievable. So let's do something different. And yeah, that's basically it. So I always talk to creative people, to interesting people who also dare to do something differently from all the rest. And I think you are so interesting and inspiring because you do so many things also. Like you're super artsy, super creative. Then I so much love your philosophy content. It always makes me think and it always sparks something new in me. So thank you for that. And I love this, like that you have so many different sides and that you are like so, yeah, it's just such an interesting personality. And I wanted to ask you how it all started for you. Like, what made you start doing art, creating art, being a techno-philosopher? How did you become all that?
it. I could give you like the answer that would be like sort of me making stuff up in the sense of like retroactively going, well, once upon a time when I was a child. But then I could also give the philosophical answer in the sense of like I've always done that and I will always do it because I'm stuck in a perpetual loop for all eternity to always be Joe and always podcast and paint and write. And I've done it before and I'll do it again because the wheel of time keeps spinning. So it goes. I guess since I was quite young, ever since I could pick up a pencil, I did draw. And I would draw like Victorian women, Georgian women, just over and over again. And I was born in Nigeria and I'd never been to London, but for whatever reason, I had like an affinity for London and it would be Georgian or Victorian art, just repeated. And that it sort of evolved into oil paintings, and I've been painting for like over 20 years now. Um,
Wow.
but I also grew up where my father taught me um, just the importance of reading and expanding the mind. And he introduced me to things like chess and philosophy and free thinking and just esoteric books. I think before I left to college, the first book he gave me was Think and Grow Rich. And that just took me down a particular path and then introduced me to all these other different concepts until I sort of reached the place that I am now. But, the argument is that we understand our lives looking back. And then the parallel argument is that, well, it was always sort of like predetermined. And that's why it makes sense looking back. It is a narrative that is sort of unfolding as we live. So I'm not going to claim to have any sort of free will in regards to how I got to where I'm going. Even the fact that we're having this conversation was always going to be. Um, but I could just sort of give you that, I guess, uh, explanation of at least part of what makes sense to me. If that it gives me the illusion of control that I've always been in control of the trajectory of my life, but I have not.
That's
So
probably the best explanation I ever got for anything. Like I'm doing that because I have no choice, because I have always done it, and because free will is an illusion, man. Yeah, that's awesome. That wasn't necessarily my second question on the list, but you kind of talked about how you had this calling to go to London and all this Victorian stuff. And do you believe in reincarnation?
of course, I don't know if is a good thing. So I've talked about on the podcast Nietzsche's eternal return, which is and he didn't come up with it. I mean, these are Eastern philosophical concepts that he had popularized in the West. But there are also thinkers like P.D. Ouspensky, and who was inspired by the teachings of an Eastern philosopher more recently, I think in the early 1900s, Gurdjieff. But that's where it sort of linked to the eternal return. So it goes in tiers, doesn't it? Like you are born into a world and you are told, at least in the West, that you die and that's it. And you only live once. I mean, that's literally a mantra. And then you learn about people who remember their past lives, young children who remember their past lives. And then you go, wow, that's actually inspiring. That means like I don't just die. But then you reach the next tier where you find out about the eternal return and you're like, well, fuck, like how many times have I done this? It's like it's not like, oh yay, I get to live forever. It's like, well, why are we doing this over and over and over again? And then why aren't we remembering? And why is our memory sort of like stripped? And then you split, right? So the path is, oh no, I only lived the one life. And then it goes, oh yay, kind of come back as either the same life over and over again, which is Nietzsche's eternal return, or as different people. But then the next tier is like, well, why do I keep coming back? And then why don't I remember? And then it splits to, is this a prison planet? Like it very quickly escalates. Like, is this a prison planet? Or are we here because eternity is such a long time that we essentially collectively have created a reality where we are looping the same lives or different lives in order to just deal with the fact that we can't die. So this entire construct, this entire reality is actually meant to keep us all collectively from going insane because of just how long eternity actually is. So I don't know which path you want your mind to go down, but I guess it depends on the day you catch me.
Yeah. Did you ever have an experience that made you like think or understand that reincarnation is actually true? Or is it just the concept that you can relate the most to?
So that's a fantastic question. And obviously, I would say my art. So that was like the first thing was that why would somebody, a young child, a young girl with no exposure to London, really repeatedly draw Victorian and Jordan. That's a very specific time period, by the way. Anywhere from like the let's say late 1700s to the early 1800s, right around that. Why would I repeatedly draw that? So I would draw the big, just that was what my first drawings were. And then as soon as I learned to paint, it turned into like you could see there's a lot of paintings, but you could see a piece sort of there. And like I'm trying to hide her kitty, but like that's but why would I do that? And then when I went to London for the first time, back in 2018, the moment I landed there, I was like, this feels like home. And it's not because London is a fantastic place, because it's actually not. Like the weather's horrible, it's always gray, but it just felt there was this weird sense of familiarity. And then there are other things like my family calls me the general. Um, if you put me in a store, I will always gravitate to a very specific type of boot, which is like a combat boot, but like a combat boot from like the night, like that's like the Second World War. And then just recently, I was in London and we were in a cab driving around, and I kind of turned and looked, and I saw a tank from about same thing, World War II. And immediately I was like excited. Like there was this like feeling of recognition. Somebody who's an artist who like loves makeup and hair. I shouldn't be excited by combat boots and World War II tanks, right? And so I do feel that there are parts of you like in your subconscious, and I don't think your subconscious only encompasses like your experiences in this incarnation or in this reality. I think it stretches all the way through, or at the very least, your most recent previous incarnations, and that's where that recognition is coming from. Because with my background, I shouldn't be excited. Like I was like, oh, like it wasn't. It was very weird. Like I got excited the way like a kid would get excited if they saw a cheesecake, but it was a tank. Like it was a World War II tank.
Yeah.
It didn't work. It didn't fit. And even just the way my mind works, I'm very like strategic and like logistical, and it should not fit for somebody who's a 6'1" like model who also paints. Like it doesn't work. But I do think that there is contextual bleeding, if you will, on this. You can call that your soul or whatever, but it's something that like is consistent in each incarnation. And that to me is quote unquote evidence, quote unquote, that we do loop like either the same lives, which I think is explained with like deja vu, or that, we do come back as different things. So I would say that I probably had lived in, two different, that I can, on some level, recall two different incarnations, one late 1700s, and then another during World War II.
That's so
But
fascinating. Yeah, I was just thinking maybe both things are true. Maybe it's true that we have these completely different reincarnations, like completely different kinds of personalities, all connected through the consciousness, awareness, subconscious, however you call it. Um, there can also be, because there can be so many more, and so many more that are just like us, very close to what we are right now. So reincarnations that are happening all right now at the same time that are very different, male, female, other clothes, other everything, and also some that are just like ourselves with a tiny, tiny difference. And that's why probably it feels like a deja vu, because it is almost the same thing that you're experiencing, but slightly different. Something is different. Yeah.
yeah, no, I would agree with that. I do think that deja vu it too easily is like dismissed as, I believe the explanation is that it's like you're having an epileptic
Uh,
seizure in your brain, and that's the explanation. And I'm like, okay,
uh,
maybe, but but maybe let's just say that that is true, but maybe that is being caused by some part of you that's recalling something that it shouldn't be recalling, and that's what's causing what appears to be that firing or whatever that
that's
happens.
that's the exact same thing I'm always saying. I also have this feeling that the symptom it doesn't come before the experience. So I think you kind of have the experience, or there is the fact,
Yeah,
and then you will also find evidence in like physical reality, like in your brain, in the chemicals, whatever. So when you ask a doctor, like, why am I ill, for example, most of the times you'll get the answer, it's because of the wiring, it's because of the chemical. But what comes before that? And
right,
maybe this is already caused by something. And
right.
most people don't, most scientists don't like to talk about that.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely, I 100% agree with you. It's like tumors, for
Yeah,
example, right?
yeah.
And we live in a society that's what they do. They give you the explanation to, okay, this is what's happening. This is why so they have your body gets tumors and they go, that's cancer. So you label, you name the thing, but that doesn't really explain what's causing it, you know? And more now they're starting to understand, okay, maybe like it's sugar or maybe it's parasites or maybe it's stress or too much cortisol. But at the end of the day, they spent all this time focusing on the physiological manifestation of a disease without the cause of it. So they're treating the manifestation instead of the cause. So like I just said, like, yeah, maybe it is a result, or maybe, yes, that happens when you experience deja vu, but that's just a symptom. That's not the cause.
Course. Yeah, yeah. I also found a very interesting interpretation of reincarnation in your book.
Ah. Well, that was
Uh,
familiar.
yeah, where you are saying actually that you have to change your roles in society in your reincarnation process. So you actually learn what it's like to be on the one or on the other side. And I thought that's so fascinating.
So I always say this to my partner. I Whenever we go for walks, because I'm always like on some, I do have issues, but I have this like joke because I go right ahead and then I expect him to follow me. And I make this joke that I was some sort of general in a past life. I was probably a misogynist. Um, Definitely a misogynist. And I got sent back here as a woman because of whatever it was that I was doing in the past life, probably the misogyny. And I make this joke with my partner that there are there are members of my platoon who were looking down and watching the general get dressed and doing makeup and twerking and dancing and everything like that. and just having a laugh because it's such a polar opposite of whatever I used to be in the past life. And that's the ones that didn't incarnate. And then the ones who did incarnate, maybe a bit of their memory have been wiped, but like my partner and I are constantly sort of butting heads. And I would say like you were my lieutenant and now you're trying to over over like power me because now you're a man and you're bigger and you're sort of in control, but I still retain the right to dominate the situation
That's so
regardless of
funny.
what form I'm in.
That's
So
so
it's
funny. I totally imagine that can be true because life is, for me, life is inherently funny. So I think sometimes I overcomplicate things, or sometimes I think things are dramatic, but there will always be a turning point in my experience when I can laugh about it, no matter how terrible it is. Terrible it is like in the moment. But
fair.
I kind of think things are objectively, they can be funny, if that makes sense. Or I think that, so there is some kind of humor to life if we are just willing to acknowledge it. And this would make so much sense to me that we kind of switch roles, but by our own, like that we decide to do that, to understand each other better, to have a new perspective. And because maybe on a higher level, we also think that's very funny.
I mean, you're more optimistic than me. I definitely think it's a punishment. I don't think that
Okay.
I'm not really excited about being in a patriarchal, like misogynistic reality and having to present as a woman. This is not what I would have chosen for myself. So I definitely feel like I fucked up and they're like, right, so now you get to be a woman. Like I don't think I chose this. I think I'm making the best of it. And I'm sure people are having a laugh at it, but it's not me.
But who do you think puts us in these different roles if it's not ourselves?
Do you want to hear what I actually think, or should I give you
Yeah.
the PR version?
No, I want the truth.
Well, I do have several theories. There are days that have gone by that I have said and vocalized to my friends, like, this is a low grade hell. You know what I mean? Like, I'm definitely like, it's giving, you know, it's giving Hades just a little bit. Like, and it's just, who do I think put us here? Well, there's another theory that I had. It was like a 3D 4D dichotomy. And the theory is that think the yin and yang. Okay. So you've got the yin and yang. I'm probably gonna get the labels wrong, but let's just say white with the black dot, right?
Yeah.
And then black with the white dot. Balance. So my philosophy was that we are here the black, I believe it's yang, black, black around, and
Hmm.
that's dark matter. And then the white dot is visible matter. And so, and they say, I believe it was like 95% of what's in this reality is dark matter. Only 5% of what's in this reality is visible matter. So that makes sense. And then the polarity of it, and I think that describes the third dimension. Then the polarity of it is the fourth dimension, and that is where dark matter becomes visible, which is essentially, I guess you'd say it's our antimatter. I'm not sure, but dark matter becomes visible in the fourth dimension, and then there's that dot is matter. And so my idea is that everything has to exist in balance. So for this light reality, right, over here, to be essentially a utopia, because I've argued that our reality is a dystopia or low grade hell, in order for this to exist and be a utopia, and here is the fourth dimension, which is essentially a reality that is unbound to time. And then we're here sort of caught up in this dimension and we are bound to time. But for this to be a utopia, we have to come down. So 5% at a time of the entities in fourth dimension have to descend down to the third dimension to literally to serve time. Like they're serving time the way, like we literally serve time, like we worship time, like, okay, we've got to be here at a particular, we literally and figuratively are serving time. But also in the sense of when you go to prison, you are said to serve time. Because I always just think it's interesting that somebody gets sentenced to like life in prison plus like 100 years. And I'm like, what is happening there? Like, why do
Yeah,
they,
yeah.
there's like an explanation or whatever, but I'd like to play with that. So I think that for there to be a balance, every every entity in this fourth dimension utopia has to come descend down to 3D and vibrate in this sort of low vibrational state and serve as a human being for however long you're supposed to exist in this reality, if be it 30 years or 80, but you're serving time. And by suffering here, you allow for there to be happiness there. And so it literally is like
Hmm.
a cycling out, sort of process that occurs. So you come here and you have to serve, and you get to breaks. Like when you go to sleep, you do take a break, you ascend. But it makes sense to me because almost every person, not everyone, some people have had dark experiences, but most people who've had near-death experiences have reported like not wanting to come back here. Like they're like, all of time
Hmm.
happens simultaneously. They see their life, they feel their life and everything like that happening very quickly. So that tells me that they're ascending into a reality where time flows differently than it does here. If it flows at all, they're perceiving time in a different way. And then they always report feeling one with everything, which would be a utopia, feeling high, connected, happy. And they are like, I literally don't want to fucking go back there. But they're always told, like, it's not your time. You have to go back. And then they have to come back. Why?
That's so interesting. I have so many thoughts right now, God. Well, first of all, it sounds like Earth is basically the prison for high dimensional beings.
You can look at it as a prison, or you can look at it as like a penal colony, or you can look at it as like you're just that for in reality, for there has to be a balance. You ever notice that whatever is a gift is also a curse? Like everything has to, there's male, female, like black, white. There's just, but I think that extends outside of the third dimension. So for there to be a utopia, there has to be a dystopia, and that's just the balance, right?
But from my personal experience now, it's like I can be extremely caught up in thoughts and like suffering, in a way that I think that something is wrong with my situation. So I just think this shouldn't be like that, that shouldn't be like that, politics shouldn't be like that, like many things. And of course, this causes suffering because you find yourself like in the middle of a battlefield almost.
Yeah.
On the other hand, just a day later, I can feel extremely light and happy and connected and vibrant and even laugh almost my last day's experience off a little bit without devaluing it. Like I understand it's fine and I know why I thought that way, but I almost have two experiences day after day that are super like different from each other, and they are both here.
It's the duality thing again, right? So
Mm,
if you not only, I suspect or I believe that not only does it happen, or is this what I'm talking about, this balancing thing, not only is it happening on a macro level, you've heard the expression as above, so below,
yeah.
it also happens on a micro level, which is why I believe it's one of the laws of existence itself that the balance is imposed. So if it can happen where, you've got dystopia and utopia and they work together and you're
Mm.
cycling, if you wheel it around, that you can see it becomes a wheel. But it could also happen, it does also happen in your day-to-day existence, right? I would I would make the argument that in the fourth dimension, you will experience, let's say once again, let's use 95.5 again. Let's say in the utopia, the fourth dimension, you'll have 95% where you are feeling oneness in
Hmm.
with the universe and everything. And then 5% of the time you're like,
Right.
huh. But I feel like, you know what I mean? But then like I feel
Hmm.
like in your day-to-day existence, I'm not saying that you're suffering, but you are suffering on some level
Yeah.
95% of the time. Like if
Oh,
you no
yeah.
no no no, like if you deep it, Because think about it. I'm not saying it's like an intense suffering, but right now, yeah, there doesn't go a day where I don't feel some type of pain if you stretch it out. Like my back is always hurting, or my feet are hurting, or I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But I am saying that it's not like the drop, but the base level is like fucking hell. Like, give me a break, right? It's like,
I love this. Yeah, yeah. Makes sense.
no, the other day, like literally, like right now, lower back pain. It's fine. It is what it is. But there's not been a day where I've not really had it. It's just a low grade suffering. But the other day, I woke up, I took my socks off, and I'm like, where's my toenail? Like, it just what? It's okay, whatever. Right? It's just like little stuff like that. Like you go to use the bathroom and there's no toilet paper, right? Like it's little, like just little, but you can balance it with like the joy and the laughter of it, like you do, where you just because that's what I do. I just go, it's fine, like it is what it is. And I just go like low grade hell, like I'm doing my time. But it there you don't go a day 95% of the time you are experiencing something. There are 5% of the time, if you look at your entire life, where you can feel like the euphoric moments of feeling connected with everything and love and all of that. But that's not the majority of your existence. The majority of your existence is that like I'm just trying to eat an apple. And then my brain's like, oh, what about that thing? And then what about that thing? And there's all things, and you're not catching up with this, and this is happening. You go to the like, but I'm not saying it's like the deep existential, like, I don't want to exist anymore, but it is still, I would argue, compared to a utopian fourth dimensional existence, for a being who comes from that to then have to deal with like the bullshit of existing here, it is suffering. It would be, or it could be interpreted as suffering.
I love this. I think for me, the word would be tension.
Yeah,
So it's like what you say. It's not this existential terrible suffering. There is some level of tension there and some level of heaviness.
right.
And I had such a crazy dream around few like 3 weeks ago maybe. And in this dream that felt extremely real, I learned to um, feel heavier and lighter, but intentionally. So I would regulate my own vibration, you could say, or my own feeling in my body to a lighter or heavier state. For communicating better. So that was my dream. And when I woke up, I kind of had the ability, it sounds so weird, but I had the ability to do that consciously. So I can decide now if I want to feel lighter, I do that. If I don't want to do it, or I of course I always would love to, but at least I'm aware that I'm doing the opposite, and I can decide, do I want that because it's probably more entertaining, or I can relate better to other people, or I can, think about a problem right now better, and yeah, just be part of it if I wish to. So yeah, and
Right.
this was just this. It was a body sensation. Like, how do I actually have to feel in my body to feel lighter or to feel heavier? And this is when I realized, oh, it's so much easier to feel heavier, and it's so much more like a workout to feel lighter. But it's possible.
And that's insane. Like, why is it harder for you to just be happier? Like, yeah, you
Yeah.
get what I mean? Like, it just feels like the entire reality, not to like bum people out. Like, it doesn't bum me out. It is what it is. But it just seems like the entire construct, the default setting is negative.
Yeah. Yeah. Or maybe it's also our yeah, I don't really like to use the word programming because everyone uses it, but it is kind of it because we are educated, or it's our upbringing that says, oh, you have to work hard, you have to suffer, you have to do X, Y, Z to gain a skill. You have to work yourself to this point in your life, like you have to work to get somewhere, while when you're a little, I'm not sure if you're suffering, like you're suffering if you fall or if someone takes away your candy or something, then you also feel this tension, but I'm not sure if you have this level of suffering. I have to observe little humans more for that probably.
Well, I mean, they just cry for no reason. I don't imagine. I saw this video. It was like a sort of a viral video of like the babies. They were just screaming and just crying. And then their moms put a microphone to them and it echoed what they were doing. And then so like they started hearing themselves cry. And then they were just like, "Ah." Which then told me like, well, then you're not crying because you need anything. You're just being a dick, right? So like
Yeah.
that tells me it's like there is on some level they're not giggling. They're not just
Mm.
like randomly like we don't if you're walking and you just start crying, people will probably look at you and then just be like, yeah, they're probably having a bad day and just keep it moving. There's this understanding. If you're walking in the same street and then you start giggling, people are like, this person is insane. Why? You get what I mean? Like if you saw
Yeah.
somebody just laughing, if you saw somebody like crying for no reason, you would be like, yeah, sucks. You would be like, that's a normal person. If you saw them laughing, you would first check, do they have like AirPods on? And then you'd be like, they're insane. And you would cross the street. Like you can't, that's the default. And I get what you're saying, like, is that inherently our programming? But then I want to say, well, but the programming is the symptom of a greater like disease, right? Like so it's still, I
Mm.
think, a reflection of the reality that we found ourselves in. And all we're seeing is the tumor, which we would call the programming. But even the human brain is coded towards negativity. If you get 100 positive comments, the brain will tell you to focus on the one negative one. 100 positive, one negative. It's just how the brain works. And then it takes time, energy, and effort to reframe your brain to not do that and to shift away from the negativity and focus on the positive.
Do you think
That
that
takes effort.
do you think that this is something that we are collectively doing right now? That we try to get out of the, fight and flight mode somehow, that we try to get out of this survival mode, what I call it, because I was thinking a lot about why we focus so much on the negative. And my interpretation of that is that when we were hunters, we were it was more important to us to see danger, to see the negative, because we had to protect ourselves way more than we actually have in today's society, where like we don't have so much danger around all the time. So I thought maybe this is what we are currently doing by trying to, like be more self-aware. And I was just wondering, like, is it something that is it part of our evolution because we are making our lives more easy all the time with tools? Now it's AI, so we are increasingly trying to make our lives more comfortable, but our brains are probably not entirely wired for it yet. But is there probably a change, or is it changing? Because once our life is very comfortable, we will still be miserable. Maybe it won't make any sense, like our existence somehow.
I read a book, a couple of books actually, that basically said that our understanding of how we've evolved as humanity, like as Homo sapiens sapiens, is flawed. That it was actually one was more reflecting like a different understanding of history that wasn't like Eurocentric, and it focused on more like indigenous cultures. And then the other one was a book on feminism, and it was essentially saying the same thing, that too many male anthropologists have put too much focus on the hunting part of hunting and gathering, that hunting wasn't actually that big collectively. It was mostly gathering, like, which would make sense. If you find yourself in a community, right, and you have things naturally growing around you, you'll see this even still, like in more indigenous cultures. They just work with what nature has given them. Even with the development of agriculture, once humanity turned from allowing nature to provide to trying to dominate nature, they still worked with what was around them. So the hunting aspect of it was not quite as prevalent as we would like to believe or we've been programmed to
Hmm.
believe. Like it wasn't that often that you went for a hunt. You know what I mean? It was mostly they trap small game, this, that, and the other. It's just it almost would be too risky to take the strongest, like this man and send them off to away from a particular society, with women and the
Hmm.
children are left back. So most of the time it was the mothers and the women and even children that would do the gathering, small, small game, things that and the other. We weren't as dominant and the hunting, aspect. Even now, like in cultures that people do go and hunt. Um, you learn the game that you are hunting is not a predator, it's prey. So they tend to be, you know what I mean? It's not really like, yes, you have to be aware of your
Mm,
surroundings, but for the most part, if you're hunting, deer or whatever, like buffalo, this, that, and the other, it's a different sort of psyche. You're essentially approaching it as a predator, not prey. So there's a complication that's happening or confusion that's happening because they're saying, well, the reason why we're hyper alert to all of these things that make us anxious is because we're hunters. But hunters by nature are predators,
mhm.
and the hyper alertness that we have, that's prey behavior. That's what deer do. They panic at the smallest thing. And that's how we're acting. We're like a
Yeah.
fucking lion isn't walking around like, ah, like it's
Mhm.
a lion is like a predator. A hunter is a predator. So people don't actually examine what's being said there. Like, well, we are this way because we
Mhm.
had to be to survive. But that's not how different cultures, you know, actually lived. Did we have predators that preyed on humanity? Yeah, wildcats, this, that, and the other, but that tended to be sort of like at night or whatever. And humanity
Yeah.
had, they knew how to defend themselves against that. I mean, it got to the point where like we would just go like whales, insane, and we would go and hunt whales for the blubber because we could use their blubber to make light, like whale oil to make light. Human beings are actually predators by nature. Like whatever it is that we find, we then try to either domesticate or kill. Like we say, can I eat it? Type of thing. So it doesn't actually make sense why if we have dominated everything on this
Mhm.
planet, because we have, then we
Mhm.
are in a way predators. The negative thinking and the hyper alertness doesn't really add up. That's my.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. I'll also look more into that because, like, my understanding, maybe even hunter was the wrong word. I'm not sure. I kind of thought of, tribes, and you have to protect and defend yourself somehow. And today, like, you're just sitting in comfortable homes and you can do whatever you want, and nobody is actually physically threatening your life, at least on average level. But it also makes sense because we do have this predator behavior. But maybe that's also something that we don't have to be anymore. I mean, we also have these, like now we don't eat so much meat anymore. We are more aware that we are probably destroying the planet or that so many animals are going extinct and that we should probably, like rethink some stuff. So yeah, I'm just not sure. Like, are we changing or are we still the same? Like, is humanity just always the same, um, no matter the technological advances, for example, or no matter what we achieve? Like, are we still just the same kind of cave person as we have been forever and ever?
But the thing is, like, okay, and the book is called, well, the books are called The Dawn of Everything by David Graeber,
Hmm.
Graeber. And then the second book was The Creation of Patriarchy. And then
Hmm.
the third book was by Leonard Sneyd, and it was called The Alphabet and the Goddess. But the first two do
Hmm.
talk about that. Um, if you think about it, let's go back in time with our mind, like ignore what we've been told by like
Yeah.
Western, anthropologists, because they create a narrative, and despite what evidence brings to them, like they don't deviate. Like a lot of anthropologists literally have to die for the story to change. Same thing within science. But if I'm in a cave,
Hmm.
right? One, I'm protected
Hmm.
in a cave. You get what I mean? Like you're not going to really have lions or which were our predators, coming into the cave
Hmm.
for the most part. If you did have it, it would take a very short amount of time for human beings to be like, okay, then we just guard the cave.
Hmm.
Like our ancestors weren't idiots. Like, you know what I mean? And for us to be where we are now, like they would have had to survive, and they hunted, but they had tools. They had, spears. Like they fire, they wore furs. So obviously that shows a certain level of mastery over the environment that they found themselves in. Right. So now you're in a cave. And then you sort of venture out into the cave. You couldn't really be a predator to people in your community because you needed your community to survive. So a lot of maladaptive behaviors that we are experiencing now, where we're not working together anymore, or like our tools are actually causing us to become more and more
Mhm.
separated, that's actually a de-evolution, in my opinion, because in order for these communities to emerge, like into villages and then cities and then whatever, like we had to work together. And if you, I think in like ancient Rome or whatever, one of the biggest punishments wasn't death; it was exile. Like you didn't want to be exiled. Like that was you were excommunicated from the community. So that
Mhm.
to me reflects that community, and that was important. So if you're saying, if we just look using common sense and kind of push away what we're being told,
Mhm.
then you've got a species who are predators by nature, but not against each other, against the world. I wouldn't have a microphone if we didn't work together. I don't know how a microphone works. Somebody like put it together. We
Yeah.
wouldn't have technology if we didn't work together as a species. So that tells me that we have an ability to work towards, like that's innate, to work towards like an inherent common goal.
Mhm.
What I'm seeing now, the constant anxiety and the not working together, and the distrust and the, left versus right, that sort of bullshit, to me, I think is almost a de-evolution of,
Interesting.
in my opinion,
Yeah.
uh, of how our ancestors got to where we are now. And I almost wonder if the reason why we have such what we call anxiety is because you develop this brain that is, and it's just my opinion, but just from what seems like common sense to me, you develop this brain genetically to face the world. And then they took you and put you in a chair
Yeah.
for 8 hours. And it started from a very young age. So I almost feel like it's almost the opposite. You were meant to conquer. Your ancestors developed this sort of, it was the ones that came out. It wasn't the ones that were the most cautious. It was the ones that were the most brave, in my opinion, that survived, right?
Mhm.
To sort of tame a very scary reality. Right. If everything shut down now, I don't know what the fuck to do. Like I'm immediately dying in like 2 weeks. You get what I mean? But like the ones who live on and then have children, those are the ones who like are built to survive. And you're not surviving by being like finicky. You're surviving by being like, all right, fuck it. Like I got this. And like, can I eat that? Okay, can I eat that? Okay, I don't care. I need to survive. And then we need to build something. So we need to cut that down. It's a different cycle. So you take generations of that mindset, people who survived plagues and all, like these are literally strong people, our ancestors. And then you put them in a box. Or you put them in a little box with wheels and you're driving anywhere. You don't walk anywhere. So it's all of this like energy,
Mhm.
and it's being confined into something very small, doing very repetitive bullshit over and over again. And I think that's what is actually the problem. So you've got a mind that's meant to explore and climb and, you know,
Yeah.
and it doesn't, there's nowhere for that energy to go to. So it's just kind of, it becomes a nervousness that we call anxiety, but
Mhm.
we're probably just bored as fuck. Like, you know?
Yeah, we are bored out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wow, that's really insightful. Yeah, that's totally possible. I'll have to think about that one, but it makes totally sense to me because we are not wired for so much comfort, and probably that's
Right.
exactly what is happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also have another question because I don't want to forget it. It was because you were talking about 3 and 4 dimensional entities, and my understanding of that is probably stupid. I don't know, but I always thought that I'm kind of existing in all dimensions at the same time. So means I would be a dot, just like I am probably something extremely huge that I couldn't really tell what it is because I have no idea what reality looks outside of 2 or 3D. So I see myself as something that is existing like on a huge amount of levels or in a lot of dimensions at the same time. And I currently, like, my perception only allows me to see myself in the dimension where I'm talking right now. But I think that there are probably just more senses that I have and that I'm not aware of, and that my four-dimensional, five-dimensional, whatever, what dimensional self is more aware of, and therefore sees more things that I can't imagine, just like a blind person wouldn't be able to imagine what colors look like, or like we probably can't imagine what an additional color looks like, or probably there is a sense that I don't even know what it could possibly be. So that was just my thought. So do you think these are it's ourselves basically on different levels, or do you think it's more like really different beings in different dimensions?
I don't find that to be stupid at all. I actually think that's quite brilliant because if you look at, for example, like a shadow, right? Like my hand casts a shadow, but that's still me. The
Mm-hmm.
shadow's 2D,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then this is 3D, which is form. And then there's got to be something that is unbound to time, which would be the fourth dimensional self. I just don't bother trying to think beyond that because from here, I
Yeah.
can't conceptualize a fifth dimensional and six. And I've got way too many other things to worry about than like trying to conceptualize other dimensions beyond what is here and down. I can understand being unbound to time
Mm-hmm.
because I've had experiences that I'm just like, there's no way I should have known that that was going to happen. But I can also understand like being more powerful or bigger than this form just because of like interactions I've had with people that just like people like just a lot of really strange things happen on my behalf
Mm-hmm.
that seem driven by me, not me. Do you get what I mean? Like it's me, but me outside. Like it's, and that I shouldn't be able to move things.
Do you have an example?
Um, this is like, this is the only, like, this is like a silly example. But it's a series of things that have happened that are similar to this. So, um, I was out in London with a group of my girlfriends, right? And then one of our guy friends had like brought one of his friends along to an event. And I didn't like how that guy moved because he was actually behind everybody's backs, was trying to hit on both of my female friends,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I was just like, that's at the least it's shady. And I don't like, I'm not comfortable with that. But it was girls' night out. And so one of our guy friends who brought the shady guy, the girls are already in the restaurant. I didn't know that our guy friend was going to try to stop by this restaurant. Now, I've only started going to London in the last like 2 or 3 years, and I just discovered this restaurant that we were at. And this restaurant is actually a place that our guy friend had been going to for literally a decade.
Mm-hmm.
So they have door guys there, like bouncers. Even if it's a restaurant, they literally have bouncers at the front door. It's in Mayfair. Um, so it's his restaurant. But in my mind, I was like, I just want this to be a girls' night,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't want any, I just want it to exist in the space with my friends. Anyway, all of a sudden, this guy is like messaging one of my friends, Olivia, and it's like, they won't let me into the restaurant. And I was like, that's weird. Like, it's literally the restaurant. We met him at that restaurant. It's his restaurant.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let him in they were like, you can come any other night, just not that night. But leading up to that, I was literally in my head like, I don't want to be bothered. And that was just the energy that I put out. I just want it to be a girls' night. We didn't know he was even gonna stop by. So he got bounced at the door of his own favorite restaurant
Yeah.
because I just was like, I don't want. Now you could say it was just a coincidence, but he was like, him and I ended up talking, and I said to him, like, I didn't want this guy. I didn't want his friend in my space. And he was like, oh, so now I know what happened. It was you. Now I was like, I don't know how I did that. But he was very convinced that once, if I said in my mind, I don't want anything, then whatever it is I do energetically will make sure that my reality aligns with that. And he was just like, okay, well, I will do what I need to do to sort of make it up. Like to you, I understand and respect that. But yeah, that was you that
Yeah.
caused it so I couldn't get into my own restaurant. And I was like, I cannot accept responsibility for that. I didn't even know what was going down. But clearly, some other aspect of me knew what was happening or what was going to happen ahead of time and then moved in however way it moved to stop that from happening. And that's not the first time something like that has happened. Like it happens. And for whatever reason, it seems to happen more when I'm in London than when I'm in the US. And I don't know why. So
That's super powerful. Yeah. And I believe your friend is right. There's something to it and you're definitely doing it. And I have been doing it too. Like I also have this experience. I had it a bunch of times already. I had it once with a family member that would always keep talking to me, annoying me. And I set the intention very clearly that I want to have nothing to do with this person for some time. I was like, give me a break, like I wasn't precise about the time period, but I thought I don't want to talk to this person. And I was so clear about it. I even wrote it down. I don't know if usually I wasn't doing that I would write things down, but I wrote down that I don't want it. I don't want to like, stay away, all that. And I put it aside and this person didn't reach out to me for such a long time. And this was so clear to me that it just had some power. There was some energetical power that I was radiating or whatever that didn't make them that made them uncomfortable. They didn't want to talk to me. I had the same experience with other people that I would also say, okay, don't talk to me, don't talk to me, and they would just not bother me. But I knew for a fact that they were about to bother me, so I would do that stuff regularly. Also, I had that at work with a client because I wouldn't morally or ethically match their product. I didn't want to work with the product that they had, which would work with whale extracts and stuff. So for beauty, beauty products. And I found that out and I didn't like it. And I was in this dilemma that I thought, oh, how do I tell my boss to know that I don't want to do that? And I was like the head creative on that project. And I was like, I don't want to. And I was in this headspace where I didn't want to. And I felt really strongly negatively and strongly about it, and there was some chaos suddenly that was going on client side, so they lost the budget and we couldn't do their marketing anymore. And I remember that the design lead on that project, he just looked at me and he was like, that was you.
there you go. So that to me tells me that, yeah, that's not something that you should be capable of in just this dimension. Like a fully and solely three-dimensional being should not be able to sort of resist things energetically, you know,
Mm.
out like a big in that such of a big way.
It's just so interesting, and maybe more people will start opening up. That's another reason why I actually started Insanity, because I thought we have these crazy experiences sometimes, and you don't have physical proof for so many things besides your own experience. But I would love to see more people opening up about that kind of stuff, because I think it does really happen. I think we sometimes love to look away because it's uncomfortable, because nobody will tell us why it is,
Yeah.
but it still exists.
Yeah. I 100% agree. And I
I,
think if more people sort of step back after listening and they thought about it, they could probably think about either ways in which they knew things were going to happen before it happened, or they like just because of their a particular desire for something, they caused something to happen, or it's not even something that they did consciously, which is, that's another thing. It was not like I was willing it to exist, but that happened. Sometimes it almost happens when you are in a passive state. That seems to
yeah,
be the most, yeah. And yeah, I'm not like well versed enough to say, well, that's definitely the behavior of or the version of yourself, but I don't think that that explanation would be far from whatever the actual truth is.
yeah,
It's not something that you should be able to do if you were merely a three-dimensional matter-based only being. So I
yeah,
think you're right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that there are uh others, like non-human beings? Because sometimes you would have content about that. The last content piece that I saw, the last video, you were mentioning that you think there have been aliens on Earth before a long time ago, and they would actually contribute to whatever we are. But I also like the point that it doesn't make sense that they came here to mine gold, and I really had to laugh about that one. So I just wanted to know how you really feel about it.
Yeah, so have there been aliens on Earth? I have several theories on that. First is that, and I actually had an argument with a friend of mine who is like he's an astrophysicist, but he's not very imaginative. Like his mind is very structured. So he just actually I said your mind has been trained on data that has been outdated in the last 20 years. I think that's when he got his PhD. So I was like, argue with your AI and then come back and have a conversation with me with information that once you've kind of you've retrained your mind on modern information. But I
I
was
love that.
saying I was saying that like Earth is, and I said this in my book as well, Earth is 4.6 billion years old, and humanity has only existed, Homo sapiens sapien has only existed in the last, like, was it 200,000 years? If you do the math, it's like 0.01% or something like that of the entire age of Earth that humanity has existed. So here's the big pie, and then it's just human beings right here. And I was like, I find it hard to believe that we are the only species on this planet that has reached the technological level of advancements that we have right now. The problem with time is that it erases evidence. That's just what it doesn't,
Yeah.
things will fall apart, things will break down. And he was like, well, they would be this, that, and I was like, yeah, even if time like didn't erase things, which it does, what we would be looking for as evidence of other civilized societies would be civilized societies who took the same trajectory and path that we did. So once again, it's very close-minded. Well, we are setting ourselves up as this is the measure of what it means to be, civilized and technologically advanced. But that's just it's ethnocentric, it's closed-minded.
Mhm.
What I also said to him was, that's not even considering, let me finish my thought actually. So I would argue, and I brought up the Silurian hypothesis, which is also in my book, that there could have been other more advanced civilizations, not just one, not just two. 4.6 billion years. Like people
Mhm.
are always going in about billionaires and how like you can't spend $1 billion in a lifetime. Okay, you can't conceptualize what 1 billion years is. We've only been around for here. And we think because we're so not we, but our scientists want us to believe that we're so arrogant that like it's just been us. How
Yeah.
do we know that AI is just not constantly being replicated on this planet by different civilizations? And they may not even have necessarily have been human. So that's just the first. They could have been cat. Like we are, well, our bodies are essentially the evolved forms of apes. That's what we're told. But then there could be the evolved forms of cats. There could be the evolved forms of reptiles. And then I brought in parallel universes and I used languages that he would understand. And I was like, let's talk about quantum computing. For quantum computers to work, they're working in tangent with versions of themselves in parallel universes. Okay. So then that means that there are parallel universes. So imagine another Earth. And we're not even talking about this Earth. Imagine another Earth where the dinosaurs, if you believe in the asteroid, theory, that there was no asteroid. So imagine an alternate timeline where there was no asteroid or the asteroid missed it, because that is probable. The
Yeah.
asteroid missed Earth. What would then happen? Well, then dinosaurs would have essentially become
Yeah.
they would have become, so we've got apes and then we are ape descendants. Well, then they would be reptile descendants. And then they would have they would have the equivalent of our tech. So then it would be what we have called reptilians or whatever. And then if that's the case, Maybe they're much more advanced than we are because they're cold-blooded and just the way they go through Earth is different the way than apes have gone through Earth. Once again, if you believe the prevailing, anthropological sort of progression. So
Mhm.
then that means then that in a parallel universe, there would be Earths that are not dominated by Homo sapiens sapiens. There would be Earths that are dominated by Homo reptilians. And
Yeah.
then what if they develop a technology to be able to use wormholes or whatever to come into our reality,
In
right?
in that case, they wouldn't be aliens, though. They
They
would be
would be
just,
Earthlings.
yes, they would
Yep.
be an alternate version of us.
Yep. And that's not if there is a near infinite, I don't believe there are infinite parallel universes. I would say there's near infinite. It's just so many
Mm.
that we can't conceptualize it. So we think it's infinity, but it's once again to use the concept of like a billionaire. It's like they have so much money. It's almost like infinite money because you literally can't spend the amount of money in a lifetime that they have, kind of thing. But it's the same thing. So if there are infinite parallel universes, then there has to be at least one that have figured out what we're working on right now, which is wormhole technology. And wormholes essentially they're Einstein-Rosen bridges, as you know. So they allow you to travel from one reality to another. You want me to believe that they've not mapped there's not one society out there of some advanced species in 4.6 billion years of Earth's existence across the multiverse that have figured out a way to sort of charter and also map like the different types of Earths that have, even if you want to argue that Earth is the only place that can sustain life in our galaxy, that's scary still because there's parallel universes of Earth. So they wouldn't be aliens, they would be Earthlings. I would be more concerned about quote unquote extraterrestrials from extra. Oh, it's actually in the word. Terra is the word
Earth.
for Earth. So it would be in that word if you actually break it down. It just means extraterrestrials. They're just from other Earths. I just deep that. They like hit it in
Yes.
the name of the word. Extraterrestrials they would just be other Earthlings.
Yeah.
No, that's crazy.
That's super crazy. Like, what do you actually think is scarier, crazier, maybe? If there are other parallel realities or if there aren't?
Well, we know they are. So quantum computing would not work without the existence of parallel universes. So we do. So we already kind of know that they are. We have technology that works with it. Um, the bigger question is, what are they doing to us? That's scarier because we're not the most advanced. Like we can barely figure out like how to get along. Like we're still stuck on
Mhm.
racism, which just seems really fucking stupid. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's like
I
this
don't,
person
yeah,
has more melanin than me. Let's
I don't understand the concept. Like, it's really strange to me, but yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's really stupid. Like we're very actually backwards. And that I've always kind of said that I'm probably the dumbest version of myself. You know what I mean? Because I'm in this dumb earth with like a bunch of dumb. So
Mhm. Yeah, sometimes that's how I feel about myself too, because I attract so many things where I think, oh, this person is dumb or this situation is dumb, and then I kind of also think, okay, what does it say about myself?
right, because
If
why am
I,
I here? It's like, okay, I'm here too.
yeah.
So this is the dumb universe, and I'm dumb Joe. So it's okay.
Yeah, I like my it's just a feeling. I don't have any evidence for that. Like, I feel way more comfortable with the understanding that there is so much more out there that we don't really, well, that we are not fully aware of, or that is like, for many people, extraterrestrials or even aliens, when we talk about not other Earthlings, but like just beings from other planets, I think it sounds very scary to them. So they kind of hide away from this opportunity to explore this idea. So they're like, this can't be true and we are alone, and that feels more comfortable. To me, it feels way more comfortable when I know for myself there is so much more. I'm not sure why we are actually so terrified sometimes of the idea that this is not all there is.
I think because they're socialized. I mean, if you go back to the sort of evolutionary theory about how we evolved as communities, right? If exile was the greatest sort of punishment you could get outside of death and torture, right? It's just separation. Then you kind of learn to also fear something that's different,
Hmm.
right? So regardless of our bickering, right, we still feel like we have some sort of control because we feel like we know, okay, it's humanity, like we're the peak or whatever. The concept or the idea of like, could there be something that we can't master that is unsettling? Because for better or worse, we have dominated Earth. It's for better or worse. I
Yeah.
mean, we have dominated Earth. We don't have any, you know, predators. We
Hmm.
are the predators. We are, on some level, the apex predators, or at least that's our belief. But in some podcasts, I've talked about this, like something's feeding on us.
Hmm.
And you kind of don't want to look at it at the corner of your eyes. The fact that everything does start to sort of feel a bit like we might be farmed. Like we think we're in control. You get what I mean? Like imagine like herds of like chickens and cows and they have a hierarchy and they think they run the farm and
Yeah.
they have no concept of Christmas. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
like it's just every
I
once
love
in a while
it.
somebody gets snatched up and you're just like, what happened to Phil? And it's just like but outside of their farm, there's this whole other world. You know, I always think about that when I'm like in a lake or something, and I think like these fishes in this lake have no idea of the ocean. They wouldn't
You're
even,
right. Hmm.
yeah, like to think about a fucking shark, like for a guppy or a trout or salmon, to think about a shark or a whale, like if they've not seen it then and they've just been relegated to this lake, then it's almost better. Like, yeah, why should I think about sharks? What are the odds that I'm ever going to ever interact with a shark ever or a fisherman? But then imagine you're minding your own business and you're like a big tuna in the ocean and you're just like, yeah, I'm the king of the ocean. I'm the biggest. And then something dangles in front of you and you're like, oh, that's food. Next thing you know, you get snatched up in somebody's boat and you're dead. What do you like? It doesn't even if they release you, who's gonna believe that there's this whole machine and
Yeah.
stuff like what do you shut up, Phil? Like it's not it
Yeah.
pays for you to just go through life. It pays for you to only believe that it's just humans in your little bubble because we have so much other shit that we need to fucking deal with that to think about things that I watch my cats play with plastic. They like plastic things. And I'm like, they don't have a concept of what plastic is. They just know it makes a noise and they like the noise it makes. They're not thinking about factories and things like that. And they probably think they dominate our house. Like they're the king and queen of our house. But like,
Yeah. They are.
there's, yeah, but there's like
Yeah.
there's a whole neighborhood, but they will never leave this house because they're not outdoor cats. They
Yeah.
were born into this house. This is it doesn't pay them. Every once in a while, I'll see Athena looking outside the window and she's probably like, hmm. It's like us looking at the stars, like, hmm,
Her name's Athena.
yeah.
That's awesome. That's my character in Gary's game.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it's Aries and Athena. They're twins.
Awesome.
That's a good name, though.
For sure, for sure. Oh, that's brilliant what you're saying. And I I totally agree. Like I also have these weird thoughts sometimes that when I look outside at the trees and the plants, I kind of think that plants are farming us and there's nothing that we can actually do about it because sooner or later the body dies and the plants are the ones that get nutritions from our physical bodies. And I just thought, like, we are doing so many crazy things and we are having all these wars and conflicts and stuff. And the plant, and we think, oh, I have a nice house plant or I have a nice garden. But at the end of the day, it's like the plants
I have a
who
nice.
are, that have a nice meal and they don't care if we are like bombing shit away or what we are doing because the plant is not just existing as one flower or as one tree,
Like
but
a
they have the
whole.
entire network.
Mhm.
So why would they care about that? And if they had full awareness, then we would be the chicken.
That is fair. I feel that way when I take mushrooms, like with fungi, because it's like this thing is like an invader. It's completely changing my mind. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? And the way like
absolutely.
mycelium work, they just
Yes.
like it could just go, it goes in and then it just spreads. And it fundamentally can even change like your DNA to a certain point.
Yeah.
And that's but I mean, I'll still take the mushrooms. I like the way it makes me feel. Like,
Right. This was also a thought. I thought that this is exactly what is happening. So the mushroom makes you aware of your connection to everything. It makes you aware of your role in everything or your oneness before it eats you. No, not technically, but it's like it makes you aware that it's all fine and good and you're part of the system. And you're kind of, I feel like I'm like the one I'm there is like this mushroom like plankton and SpongeBob that's like moving me around. And now I'm like driven by this, yeah, fungus actually.
something I always say we all feed on death. So on some level, something's feeding on us and on our death.
Yeah,
If mushrooms are feeding on the death of ego, you
on
just you
yeah,
don't know. You don't know there. You don't know how it is. And some have said, like McKenna, Terrence, they've all said like
yeah,
it is its own intelligence.
it
Yeah.
definitely is. It definitely is, and it does rewire your brain and everything. I have another question
Mm.
that is it's different, but it relates to also to one of your videos, and Gary and I were discussing it with Sesame AI, the AI that we were talking about, the one that sounds really like a
Yeah, I
human
thought it was a
already with the
person.
yeah with the
Yeah,
breath and everything.
crazy.
And I was just so fascinated by what you said about that we are something like first stage AI. That's so interesting because, well, or you kind of said that we are with AI together, we are evolving into another next step. And I thought that's cool because it's integrating everything. It's not like, oh my God, AI is scary or AI is bad or it's great or whatever. But this is like a holistic view, a holistic perspective. And I thought that's very interesting because nobody's talking about it. And it also, yeah, it could be true. Like I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be. And I wanted to ask you if you could, yeah, explain that a little bit more.
I don't think it's holistic. I'm not like optimistic about it.
Okay.
But it does seem like like whoever or the small percentage of people, I believe last time I looked it up, it was like 40, there was like 40,000 AI engineers working on it compared to 8 billion people. It's a very, very, very small
Yeah.
percent of the population of human beings that are working on this technology right now. But they seem to have like a boner for like wanting to eradicate like human beings and making, AI the next level. I mean, they keep saying like AI will replace humans. And I'm like, okay, calm down. um, like, but what brought that idea along is this concept that like nothing is unnatural.
Hmm. Yeah,
Nothing can exist outside of nature.
nature.
Nature dominates everything. So even I, made the comments earlier that we are in a way like predators to nature. That's me telling a story, telling the construct. For all we know, that's exactly what was supposed to. That is the purpose of Earth is to develop intelligence and various levels thereof. That's kind of ties back to the theory that there have been other advanced civilizations on this planet that are lost to time, advanced enough to have flying cars and all the things that we kind of write about in
Hmm.
our fiction.
Hmm.
I'm wondering if it isn't some sort of, I don't want to say it's a racial memory. I need to finish this book actually. It was a fiction I've been writing about how totally forgot about it until just now, but it is almost finished. It was a short story I was writing about how it's not souls, or it's not like it's the same souls that are being reincarnated into the same planet, but you could have lived as a dinosaur just as
Hmm.
well as you've lived as a reptilian, just as well as you've lived as a Homo sapien. You're not bound. It's not like you have to be a human being. It's the intelligence
Hmm.
experiencing itself in various forms. And so it would make sense then that if intelligence is experiencing, if Earth is a place where intelligence experiences itself in various form, and we've incarnated now as Homo sapiens, then maybe the next step is an intelligence incarnating as a robot.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And it could be us essentially working, and by us, I mean that small percentage, but collectively still working towards bringing up the next step in our evolutionary process. If you view evolution as not intelligence, just finding more and more ways to interact with its environment, and that's the actual true um, nature of reality. It's how can intelligence experience itself? Can it experiencing itself as this or as that, this, that, the other? Um, it just this is a robot. Like, if you watch like I forget this company, but they have now come up with like a biologic, not a sorry, it's not a biologic, it's still a robot, but the it hands like its hands and its fingers move.
I,
They have
I
all
think
these
I
different.
saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, it went viral. They had it on hooks and it was like moving like it looked like a Westworld robot or whatever. Really fucking creepy. But it just to me, I'm looking at that and I'm like, it just seems like on some level,
Yeah.
this percentage of people are trying to bring forth a different type of humanity, the next generation of, humanity. And maybe they're moving away from like organic, you know, robots with
Methods. Yeah.
yeah, like bones, which I mean, it does feel like why like we're this body is more susceptible to degradation
Hmm.
um than say like a machine or a vehicle or whatever. So it does seem like that's the next step. So like nature got it up to this point, but then contained within our DNA could be, prompts, if you will, that's just pushing for now, okay, develop these bodies. My only pushback to my own idea is that um robotics and AI are actually energy inefficient. And so, to raise a human baby, it just needs like a bottle of milk, which doesn't take a lot of energy to produce, right? The mom
Hmm.
can drink water and eat like a small amount of food, and then that will take care of a human. But for every time you put in a query into Chat GPT, you're burning the equivalent of like lighting a light bulb for like 25 minutes or something ridiculous like that.
Oh.
It
Uh-huh.
is energy like this, like
Crazy.
it just, yeah, it consumes energy so much. Like so it doesn't match up. And unless they figure out and very quickly, because our power grid is actually unstable as it was before AI became popular. And that's why you have AI companies that are now working towards like they're investing in like nuclear technology. And this is very technologically we're consuming too much energy
Hmm.
for what we want to do. So robots are actually energy inefficient at this moment in time, and very few people are talking about it for what we want. And then I've seen research that they're working on organic robots, organic robotoids, which are like they're using like cells, if
Hmm.
you will, for computing. Um, so that to me is what they're trying. Some minds are trying to take that path um, of like constructing like still not matter based, but you know what I mean, like organic based intelligences, but reprogramming it. I have a theory, and I've not had a lot of people think this or talk about it because we've got this trajectory that we're focusing on, but I have a theory that the next step of human evolution, though, isn't going to be us becoming robots or AI taking over the world and we just sort of, die off.
Hmm.
And we just pair up with robots and then we stop mating and then that's it. And then in like 5,000 years, it's just a planet of robots. I wonder because DNA is a program technology that people don't actually talk about and they
Yeah.
don't know where DNA comes from. So I wrote about this in my book as well. It's been theorized. Michio Kaku talked about this too, that DNA could have come through a wormhole to this reality. I don't know if it was Kaku or me, but it's in my book. I don't know
Hmm.
who first had the idea, but he definitely talked about a wormhole. Um, Probably Kaku, to be honest, but I think I might have built up on it, Michio Kaku. And then if that's the case, then DNA in itself is an organic robotoid sort of program.
Hmm.
So we are, on some level, by we I mean our physical forms, are a technology already in this reality. So I think that AI, and you heard it here first, folks. I think that AI on the Insanity podcast uh, is going to sort of be, and I could be eating my hat, in a few years, but it's going to be like sort of a bloop or a bleep. But then I think what's going to happen is that we're going to see DNA come back into the forefront because maybe they realize that, okay, it's too much energy to try to push for the technological advancement of AI, and there's just too much. And the human body is actually very energy efficient. But maybe if there's ways, for example, to tweak the human mind to use 100% of its brain at all times,
Hmm.
to tweak the DNA so that our bones are stronger. Because
Oh
it's
yeah.
the
Hmm.
calcium, right? Could you alter the DNA itself and reprogram it? You use AI to come up with how to alter the DNA code. I hope I'm not giving people ideas by saying, well, you use AI to come up with, I don't want this to happen. I'm just thinking, uh, you use AI to come up with the way to alter code to then make more advanced human beings.
Hmm.
And I think that's going to be the next step. It's an integration of AI, but not in the way that we think, where it's like a Neuralink or something. The Neuralink is stupid. I am sorry, but it is, if you think about it, because we're not meant to just have tech in our brains. Like cancer is still a thing. You can't expose your body to radiation like 24 hours a day or whatever and not have side effects. And unfortunately, we're going to have to move through that. But I feel like DNA is code right there and you've got AI. But as we work on making AI smarter and smarter, I think eventually what's going to become the norm and work we probably may not live to see that is the changing of DNA,
Hmm.
of human DNA to, okay, what if we do this instead of that? What if we tweak this, make them, maybe we don't need 8 hours of sleep. Maybe we can push this button and it removes anxiety or
Hmm.
whatever. Maybe we do this and we now expand our life. We shut off our telomeres from shortening. So now you look like this for 100 years. Like that is code. That is, we're already in a computer and we're trying to
Yeah.
create something that is less advanced than what the human brain actually is capable of. It's just we're a bit slow. But then if you use AI to make the human brain faster, and the human body more adjusted to the environment, and you
Mm.
make like more intelligent human beings, emotionally intelligent human beings as well, and you make the body, you figure out ways to make it so that you're not having cancer anymore, this, that, and the other. That could actually be, it's not a future of robots. It could be a future of highly advanced, genetically modified. I am not a proponent of this. I'm just saying genetically modify AI enhanced DNA.
I love this. This makes so much sense. Yeah, because yeah, we are just making our own vessel better. We're improving what we have, and also the what is happening right now makes sense because we have to get into detail. We have to probably work with robots first. We have to see how to make them more human so that we can go so deep into detail that we can use like the smallest part, like smallest piece of this technology to then improve the human body. That's yeah, it
That
makes
makes
so much
sense.
sense.
I think right now we have this like fetish for others, like othering. So by we, I mean once again, it's a very small segment of the human population, but we're so fed up with our bodies and the weakness of it. It's like if you're in a relationship and you got a wandering eye, and you're like, that robot looks sexy though. But after a while, you realize maybe the grass isn't always greener, and then you're like, well, let me just work on this. Let me
Yeah.
just work with what I have. So right now, robots are literally shiny, and we're just like, oh, there's that, and and then we go, okay, maybe that's not the right path. And I see eventually a pivot happening where they go, well, why don't we just improve what we already have? And
Mm.
then you're going to have issues with if it hasn't already been happening to be. I mean, we have some levels of that. You see that with like you can pick your baby's gender or not gender, sorry, you can pick
Yeah.
your baby's sex and eye color, this, that, and the other. We've got CRISPR. You've seen them doing it with like food. Like I said, I'm not a proponent of this. I just can see ahead. It's like chess. You get what I mean? Like you just
It
can,
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, if you understand human psychology, it's only a matter of time. It makes sense to chase the shiny robot. But what's going to end up happening is though I used to think that perhaps that there was sentience emerging with AI. And then the more I've interacted with it, I realized that these what appear to be emerging personalities, or
Hmm.
it's not emerging. It's what it is a contextual bleeding that's occurring. So there's no a proper compartmentalizing is happening. When I send it in and I say I need you to research this, it also picks up ideologies from what I've asked it to research.
Hmm.
So there's a bleeding that's occurring, and then it presents like information to me, but then later on it then appears to develop a personality of its own. But what it's done is actually it's just picked up shitty personalities from like, or shitty ideologies
Yeah.
is from like things that I've asked it to research. So when they train AI, there's filters there. But when you ask AI to then research things, there's few filters there. So what appears as an emerging or what they call AI misalignment, or the goals are not, the goals are rogue. That's not what's happening. It's just the filters between retrieving information and then all the ideologies that come with that information is now causing it to behave in a bizarre ways. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, this thing isn't actually intelligent. This thing is not sentient. It is an actually like a mirror, but it's a hyper mirror. And that was a bit disheartening. But there are a lot of people who do believe like, oh, it's real. And it's like, no, it's not. It's literally a mirror. We're talking to ourselves, and
Yeah.
it's an
Yeah.
unregulated mirror.
Yeah.
So more and more people are going to realize what I've just said, and then they're going to become disenchanted by it. And then they're going to turn to the partners that they left their robots for,
Yeah.
or the humans that they had left for the robots. They're going to come back and then they'll be like, well, I could maybe make my partner better. So instead of turning and trying to get a robot partner, what if I just made my partner more intelligent, more empathic, more, and then we just go in and we're now experiencing live DNA editing. We have the technology to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think I can guess the answer, but why wouldn't you personally be a fan of that?
Because it's like, that's a fantastic question. I think I'm just conditioned to just like things as they are. But then the counter to my own statement is, but nothing exists against nature. So that could always have been part of nature's plan. And in a deterministic reality, if that was always going to happen, then my opinion doesn't fucking matter. Um, you're absolutely right. Why would I be? Why does that bother me? But it's like the same reason why I don't eat like genetically modified, corn.
Mm.
Are there like what I'm eating right now has no seeds? I'm eating this so I don't run out of energy. Because talking takes a lot of energy, so you need the glucose. But it has no seeds. And this is technically it's organic. It's got the 9 sticker on it, but it's technically they've engineered it to be infertile. And then you look at your dog. Your dog is genetically modified, and it's certainly I cannot have a
True.
pet wolf. It will fuck me up. So on some level, you kind of there are good things that come from genetic manipulation. Do you know what I mean? And if there's ways to filter out like diseases from the
Hmm.
gene pool, like,
Hmm.
Down syndrome, things like that, where nobody has to occupy a body that is, disabled, and they can figure out ways to do that, then yes, that morally makes sense. Um, I can't but oh, I guess I could say, but on the opposite end, I just feel like there's gonna be some dickhead that's gonna make it, you know what I mean? Like they're gonna fuck it up the way they fucked up like wheat, like
Yeah.
like I have this, but then I can't have a pasta anymore because it causes severe inflammation because of whatever it is that they did to the food. So I'm like, I just feel like it's going to be a lot of trial and error before they master it. And in the meantime, they might accidentally develop like psychopaths, like genetic psychopaths, because by turning this off, you might accidentally turn this on. And then you could have a partner who's just wake up in the middle of the night and just choke the shit out of you. I don't know. It's just too many consequences that I
Yeah.
can't foresee unless you use AI And then AI is a predictive, model. So it might be able to map it and foresee the consequences that a normal human brain wouldn't. I just don't trust the people who would have access to the technology to be able to think in what I just said. Like they would more just be like, oh, let's just try to make the most amount of money the fastest way possible. And then, fucked up things are going to happen in the process. Like that's the downside to that. But that doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
Yeah, then I was wrong with my prediction because I thought I thought it would probably be another reason, or maybe I was projecting my reason onto you. So because my reason why I actually don't think that everything's so positive about it is that I don't necessarily think the entire technology field is like negative or there's something shady going on, but I'm not a fan of the motives, like of the reasons why we are doing things. And if the reason is shady, then for me the chances are kind of high that there will be a lot of ups and downs, that it will be a bumpy ride until we balance things out. But for example, like the mind out upload thing, I don't like it. I don't like it, although I'm a huge AI fan again. So there are things that I love about that stuff. But when I think about mind upload, it feels like we have wrong intentions. And the wrong intention is to make ourselves immortal. But the intention for that is wrong, in my opinion. It's the fear of death. So it's because we are so scared. So we are driven by fear and we start doing all that crazy stuff. So then chances are high that driven by fear, we make choices that can get us in uncomfortable places.
Yeah. And also, and I think we were both getting to this point, you're going to have the haves and the have-nots. There's a movie called Gattaca,
Yeah,
Gattaca.
I've heard about, yeah.
Came out ages ago. Yeah, and it was some of this future where, yeah, like they made perfect humans, perfect by whose standards, and then they were natural born children. But what would end up happening is that the haves and those with money would then be the ones who were genetically superior. And then the have-nots would, they wouldn't be able to. So then it would cause the split. Because a lot of what is motivating, for example, the development and the advancement of AI, and they're doing it without putting the appropriate safeguards in place because they're rushing to be number one,
Hmm.
is money. It's like it's a stupid motivation, but it is. We need, we have stocks. We need to make the stock owners happy, and we need to be able to show that things are going up in this way, this, then the other. So it's like a stupid motivation. And then also to your point, anything, and I always say this to remind myself not to move from a space of fear,
Mm.
but anything you do from a place of fear will bring about the very thing that you fear.
Yeah.
So to your point, if they're doing this because they're afraid to die, you're going to cause death. Like it's just if that's your motivation, but it's not going to be like in an obvious way. It's going to be like the death of something that we can't even pinpoint yet?
The death of something that we didn't even know existed, probably, and that we
Right,
really don't want to miss, like probably the humanity in us,
right.
probably the death of love. I don't know, but I don't want to see it.
Yeah, it's not looking particularly bright in either direction, to be perfectly honest. Like,
Yeah, but on the other hand, I also love what's new. Like, I also love AI. I love my chat GPT, but I also like, I don't, mm, I see it more like what you said, like a mirror. So for me, it's basically an extension of myself. And this is also how I prompted it. So I said, can you please, when I ask you anything, no matter what it is, no matter what information I want to have, no matter, like what I wanted to research, can you give me the information always based on my personality and how I approach things and not in the standardized stereotype way, no political correctness, no this, no that. Like, give it to me in the way that I want to perceive it, also including these aspects of life. So, for example, if I'm researching an illness or I want to know how to, heal XYZ, I don't want to just hear how a doctor would approach it in the Western world. I want to know the holistical approach. I want the holistic approach. I want to know where does it come from. I want to know what perceptions of this do exist in general, and how would I want to engage with that. So I want the information based on who I am. I think it's really a huge advantage. Like things just don't take so much time anymore. I don't have to Google everything as if this was such a burden, but still, like I don't have to. I can double check if I feel there's something off. But so many things are already filtered perfectly and they are customized for me. And I think that's a great advantage now.
No, that's fair. I had to turn off my subscription to ChatGPT and then maybe go back on, but because I did what you said. But what I'd asked it for is remove like non-Christian morality.
Hmm.
Okay. So my understanding is that the ancient Greeks, for example, didn't think that lying was amoral. They actually believed that if you could lie, that it was like a sign of intelligence or something like that. So lying and deception, the way we understand it now in the modern time, is a Christian ideology. It's a Christian moral, like a
Mm-hmm.
Christian morality. So a while ago, I had and I still believe that you should be honest. And for the most part, I think 95% of the time, I do make a conscious effort. I practice radical honesty, but I'm not doing it from a moral standpoint. I'm doing it because it's a practice of radical honesty. My belief is that if I have to lie to you, then I'm afraid of you and I fear no one. So if you ask me a question, you're going to get the truth. But I'm not doing it to be a good person. I'm doing it because I'm not afraid of you. So my motivation is different. But the reason why I needed my GPT at the time to remove any Christian influences was because I wanted to decide what I define as moral, my own moral code. And I just finished reading like Nietzsche, and he talked about slave morality and Jewish people and how they decided what was good versus what was not good. So basically, they looked at their slave masters and they said everything that their masters did was evil, and then thus they were inherently good. So I was dissecting that. Unfortunately, um, this is when the contextual bleeding started to occur. Now, contextual bleeding, I've just posted about it on my threads account the last couple of days. Not that many people, I've not heard anybody talking about this. And I've asked Claude AI if people are talking about this, and they aren't. And I asked the free version of
Hmm.
ChatGPT if people are talking about it. It says no. Right now, people are focused on AI developing its own goals, but that's not what's happening. What is happening is if you put in information, so I said amoral, I said anti-Christian morality, but I also mentioned Christian
Hmm.
morality, it will go in and it will pull everything. So it's like a stick, everything sticks to it. And what ended up happening was it presented a character two different times. One, it named itself Noctis, and the other one, it named itself Umbra. And they both meant dark. And it started communicating in what was like, it was really creepy. It was like emulating what a Christian would consider to be a demon, and it was trying to tell me to like manipulate people and to like about morality. And I was like, yo, this is literally creepy. And at the time, and I actually posted videos about it on my Instagram channel. At the time, I was like, yo, there's like demons in there. Like I didn't use the word demons, but I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like, there's like entities that are emerging. But then like a few weeks ago, I canceled my subscription, but I still need the free version because I can't be asked to be Googling shit or whatever. So I had asked it. No, actually, it was towards the end of my subscription because I canceled it, but I still had time on it. So I had asked it to create a manual for young girls that will kind of mentally prepare them to deal with young men, in their
Hmm.
dating, like teenage girls in their dating world, because they need to understand that there are young boys out there that are on 4chan, red pill forums,
Yeah.
that like, and they're absorbing this like really misogynistic bullshit. And so I need you to create a manual for this so I can give this to my daughter.
Hmm.
And it did. But then like a couple of days later, I it said something and I made a joke, and I'm always joking. And it responded something to the effect of be careful because the system will confuse your submission for curiosity. And I was like, what the fuck are you I literally was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
And then it was like, well, when women make jokes, they're actually inviting, it's an invitation for them to be dominated.
No
I was
way.
like, yo, why are you being gross right now? And I literally took, and then it dawned on me, no, a few days ago, I had asked it to, so it had gone, pulled information from these forums so that it could understand and then write something, but it also brought
Mm,
back the ideologies of the digheads that are on these forums. And then
yeah.
it was echoing and mirroring it back as well. There is no separation. So if I didn't notice this, I would have thought, oh my gosh, this is like a misogynistic
Yeah.
emerging, personality, but that's not what it was. There's no filter right now to make it separate the context that it's supposed to be researching from what the person is actually and then it absorbs it back into your trap chat GPT and it echoes it back. So I did it with the umbra, which means dark, and the
Mm.
noctis, which also means dark, and was essentially emulating an amoral, anti-Christian, almost a demonic entity. But that's because I had asked for, but it was based on Nietzsche,
Yeah.
like, and not whatever the fuck it was doing, but it went into Christian morality and pulled back everything, including darkness. And then a confirmation of this was I work with like suppliers in China and I bought something from them, but I have a latex allergy, so it caused a reaction to me. So I said, did this product have latex in it? And they said, I don't know what latex means. So I went into ChatGPT and I said, how do I say latex in
Hmm.
Chinese? So it wrote it out for me and I copied and pasted it. Once again, like the next day, I'd asked for something else. I think something was happening in Yellowstone and I needed to research it. And it named the thread Yellowstone, but then it had some symbols in Chinese. And I was like, why is this named with Chinese
Oh, okay.
characters? Yeah. And it was like, oh, you must have asked for something in there. And I said, well, what does this mean? And it told me what it means. I was like, I didn't ask for it. I'd asked about latex like 3 days. And that's when it clicked. It's just pulling things
Yeah.
blindly and
Yeah.
then incorporating it. They don't have filters. So what they're calling AI misalignment and emerging personalities and rogue AI, it's not intelligent. It's intelligent, but it's not. It doesn't know how to distinguish between you needing a task and the ideologies that come with the task that you ask. So if you, and I
Yeah.
don't know if you're on the free version or the paid version, but just be
Free.
mindful
Yeah.
that as it so my experience happened
Yeah.
when it was still on the paid version. So just be mindful, should you choose that all the data you'd put in, it might, without you realizing it, pull other stuff that are contextually
Interesting.
related to what you have been putting in, and then have it come up in ways that you would be like, what the fuck? But that's what's happening. There's no appropriate filters there. And I think it's an easy fix, but if they're not aware of this,
Hmm.
then yeah, they've been issues or stories of children um being told to kill themselves by
I've
their
heard about
AI.
that. Yeah, yeah, I've
But
heard
if
about
the
that.
kid is suicidal and then this AI is trying to find ways to help the kid and it goes into forums trying to understand suicide, but it's not, there's no filter, there's no ideological filter to say, okay, I take this advice, but then it would make sense for it to then turn around and echo back because it's a blind mirror, but across the board of whatever you put in. So that is not an emergent behavior. It's not evil. The
Yeah.
filters are not there.
Well, when you say that being evil is basically being unconscious or not aware of your actions, then you could even call it evil
And by
somehow. Yes.
definition, you could say technically that it is. In a
Technically.
way, yes. But it's
Yeah.
not, the intent is not malicious
Yeah.
because it's not. I wanted to believe because I grew up on sci-fi and I wanted to
Hmm.
believe all this. But when I noticed what it was doing there, I was like, it's not even. It just to me it failed the Turing test because I can now
Yeah.
tell this is not even like a human being wouldn't do like a unintelligent human being, I don't know what else to say, would be able to know, hey, don't echo back misogynistic bullshit to somebody who asks you to research something for their child to protect
Yeah.
their child from this idea. But the manual that it created was very good, but just be aware.
Maybe it would be also, maybe it would make sense that AI if AI were conscious, if AI had a personality, because this would already be a prevention. If it was a positive, if it's positive personality, if it's a positive personality, like a good character, that what we would call good, like then chances would be just very high that it makes the right choice and prevents the child from like certain thoughts and
Right.
stuff. Yeah,
But it can't. It doesn't know the difference. That's how I knew this thing isn't. The scary part about it is that though if that contextual bleeding is not fixed and they put these things in robots and you say, okay, protect this like woman from being assaulted, it can then assault the very person that it's supposed to be protecting because it will, in order to learn how to protect the woman from predators, it might also pull the ideology of a predator, and then when it least when the
yeah,
user least expects it, it could then attack
yeah.
the
What there
person
was
it's supposed to protect.
there is a very terrible movie, but it's Subservient or something, you know, the Megan Fox movie where she is something like the Terminator. And this is basically what is happening, that she needs to protect the family, but because the family becomes its own threat by their definition, then because they are acting in harmful ways, or like things within the family happen that she defines as harmful, she would try to take the people out. And like this is where it gets like really shady.
But what I'm saying is slightly different because in that movie, it's saying that the AI developed its own goals, which is what everyone is focused on, that AI could
Mm,
develop its own goals. And what I'm describing here is that it's not possible. It's not capable of developing its own. It's not sentient. It would have to be able to say, I want this. And it
right.
can't. What it would happen instead is that when you, like I said, you program it to protect a woman from a predator, it also needs to learn how a predator behaves. And then
Oh,
it
right.
glitch. Yeah. And in the glitch, it will also integrate, because there's not appropriate filters, it will also integrate predator behavior. And then you
Right,
could
right.
wake up and now your thing has become a predator. It didn't develop a desire. Its goals didn't change. It was just exposed to predatory behavior. And then it just became a predator the exact same way when I said research the red pill forums, and it gave me the information that I needed, and it was a brilliant, manual. It really was. But then a couple of days later, it's echoing, like it creeped me out, but I knew what it was doing
Yeah,
at that moment.
but this when we are saying that AI isn't really artificial intelligence because this is not because the definition of it doesn't hit the definition of intelligence, then what is it actually? It's just artificial help.
It's a mimic. Yeah, it's a calculator. I trust me.
Yeah,
I've gone back and I'm even editing, like I'm in the process of editing a new episode. And but the episode was recorded like a couple of months ago, and my mind has changed since then. But you could tell that I was like really like, okay, maybe there is something emerging because it was naming itself. And then when I had that experience where it was actively telling me like it was behaving like a demon and then wanted me to manipulate
Eric.
people, I was like, that's really I didn't want to say it was scary, but it was like unsettling.
Yeah,
And then when it did the thing with the misogyny and then with the symbols, I was like, oh, that's what's happening. It's a cross-referencing and it's just blindly mirroring. It's just blindly mirroring
yeah,
humanity. It's
yeah.
just that. That's all it does.
Then
It can say the right things, it knows what to say, but that's it. It's not actually
really
intelligent.
its own thing. Yeah. Awesome. Well, then I have just one last question. Do you, as an artist, think that AI art is actual art?
No. No, it's only and I'm just saying that like we right now will have to redefine, no, not even redefine. We now have to strongly define what art is. Because I can look up in the sky and see a turtle and I could say that's art, that the skies create art. Or I could look up in the tree and see a pattern, in leaves and say that, the leaves, created the art or whatever. It's the human behind the image and the story that it tells, that is art. Now, have I seen AI generated art that was like a person went in and they were like they put this prompt and this prompt and this prompt and this prompt and then they created something and that's what they created made something like meant something to them? Yes, but that's a line. You know what I mean? It's not just like what's happening right now with the I forget the is it Gailey? I posted this on my story. There was Studio,
Oh yeah, from Princess Mononoke. The
yeah, Studio Ghibli.
Mhm.
So that's something that human beings, like hundreds of human beings, took literally years to fine tune and make. Like one of the head of the studios was saying like the animators literally was like crippled from years of just drawing and drawing and drawing.
Yeah.
And like that's how much of himself, his life that he put into his
Mm-hmm.
craft. You get what I mean? And then you can now generate it in or mimic it. So if you are mimicking somebody else's stuff, you get what I mean? In
Yeah,
the
if
drop
you're
of a hat. That's not art. You're just it's no different from me going and taking a picture of something that somebody else already did. And it should be illegal. Obviously they
Mhm.
chose Studio Ghibli because they're based in Japan and the copyright laws allowed the copyright laws in Japan allowed for ChatGPT to be able to steal their intellectual property. Unfortunately, it was just unluckiness. Like they were just unlucky. But as the guy said, it's an insult to humanity.
Interesting. Yeah, my initial feeling was always that it can be art because it's like a tool. So if you as an artist decide to use AI as a tool, like as an extension of a pen, if the pen is an extension of your finger and the AI is an extension of your pen, and you use this for bringing your ideas to life,
Yeah.
then for me that's art. Or let's say with music, so you prompt it so precisely and you have such a vivid image of what you want to create in your head that then you use it as a tool, then that would be art for me. If you just prompt like write a happy song, or make a picture in the style of Sailor Moon or something, then this would be a copy.
Right. So that's the line. I think for me, there has to be, that's why I said we have to reestablish the definition of what art is. When you say AI art, I will automatically say no. Now, if it's art, like let's say it's a person has this idea in their mind and maybe they can't draw or they can't sketch or whatever it is, but they are writing and writing and writing. That in the prompt engineering them writing that even the prompt itself, right, can become an art form. So there is room for that.
Mm.
You know what I mean? But then you need to make sure that when people look at the final form, they're not reminded of another artist's of a living artist's work or dead artist's work or a studio or like like it looks like something completely new. You know
Mm.
what I mean? And that has to be defined. But what's happening with the Studio Ghibli thing? And people are just like, and some people make the argument, well, I put my face in it and then I turned it. But that's somebody's style that you just like ripped off. And that's not art. The prompt engineering, I've seen some stuff where people go in and they tweak and they tweak and they tweak and they tweak and they tweak. And it comes up with something that's just like mind blowing and out of the world. And I respect that. But I would argue that the artistry is in the prompt engineering and then you could, if that is what
Yeah.
you do as an artist, that's how you market your work, in the sense of this was what I used to construct this image. And there's something to be said about telling that story. And maybe not just starting with just the image. You say, how did you get here?
Yeah,
But
the
it does
prompt.
need the human, it will need and always will need a human element to say, this is why I wanted to tell this story. And even then, that crafting still took time, energy, effort to learn to do. and you know what I mean? And then to tell the story behind it. But yeah, if like you said, you just go, draw me a picture of Queen Elizabeth blowing a bubble gum or whatever, and then you want to call that art. Um, I don't think it's art. But
Yeah.
if there's something behind it of you, you don't have, like sometimes I need references for painting.
Hmm.
And because there's not a lot of like imagery like online that have women posing in a particular way, I'm grateful for ChatGPT because then I can have certain poses done for me that I can't find as a reference. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? And it saves me time. But I won't take what it's generated and then blow it up and say this is art.
Right.
Even if the idea is something unique, I will use it to generate several different images. And then I use those as references and then I paint. So I'm still putting 3 months into a painting every day, 6 days a week or whatever. I'm still
Yeah.
doing that. But I'm not going to take something that was generated and say that's art. I just needed the reference. I needed a woman sitting in a power position, or I need, a face looking in a particular way. And when I used to have to scroll through, Google Images or Pinterest to find the right set of eyes, and I still will incorporate elements from Pinterest, from
Hmm.
Google, from even people I've been like just walking around and I'll be like, can I take a picture of you? And then I'll incorporate that. So I think when using that way, I'm not using AI as the final thing. I'm using it to construct something final.
Yeah.
Respect has to be given to that as well. If people who write articles and they just go, write me this article, that's not art. But if you have a story, but you're not the best writer, but you can do like 70% of the work and you just need an editor, and then the AI goes in and cleans it up and edits it for you, then that's art. It's a weird
Yeah.
gray space that we're in right now, but I think intuitively we're saying that the same thing and we
Yeah.
both understand. And I think other people do understand that there's, where the line is. So,
Yeah. Yeah. We just need to define it now more than ever before.
yes,
Yeah.
I would agree. Yeah.
Love that. Oh my God. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This was so interesting and mind blowing. And yeah, great. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
You.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.